Well, I'm joined now in the studio by senior ruling AK Party member and former Turkish Minister of EU Affairs, Egemen Bagis, and the Deputy Chairman of Turkey's opposition Republican People's Party, or CHP, Unal Cevikoz. Gentlemen, pleasure having you both here on the Newsmakers. Egemen Bagis, let me start with you. Something that I'd love to get clarity on from the AK Party's perspective. When you look at that election and the dispute over it, do you believe it was mishandled in the counting, or that it was actually physically rigged in favor of the opposition?
There were some cases in some areas where rigging took place. There were some places mishandling took place. There were irregularities and discrepancies in some other places. So you cannot pinpoint all of the problems to one issue. What happened was, the night of the election board first announced that the difference was 28,000 votes around the first night. But when some of the districts were recounted, the difference came down to 13,000. I personally would have preferred if they had recounted all of the votes of March 31st and declared the winner. Even one difference would have been enough, but at least it would have been fair. But we saw that in some areas, AK Party's votes were registered to CHP column. In some areas, CHP's votes were registered to Vatan Partisi column. In some areas, other parties' votes were mismanaged. But the main reason that we are now facing a re-election is more than 20,000 election workers of the total 62,000, so 1/3 of them were illegally appointed, because there was a law passed in 2018 which requires the chairman and at least one member of the election committee at each ballot box to be a public servant.
To be public. So you cast
and
doubt
they were
over them.
not.
Okay. So you cast doubt over them. Oh, just before I get a response from Unal Cevikoz, why do you think they rigged it, or rather, who did the rigging?
I cannot pinpoint any individual or any group, but whoever would benefit from this might have an involvement in the rigging, or in the re-reporting, or in the way things were taken out of hand. We saw, for example, in some areas, some of our applications were rejected.
Okay.
But for example, in the district of Büyükçekmece, you could see 150 voters registered to the same address, which is technically impossible. And unfortunately, no one made a fuss about it. And when we applied for that to be fixed, we were told it was too late.
Okay. We've got it laid out by Egemen Bagis. They believe it was a combination of both, Unal Cevikoz, because that's why the Supreme Electoral Board had no choice but to call for a re-election on the mayoral vote. That's the perspective from AK Party. Tell me why you disagree.
Well, I'm inclined to disagree, because the ballot committees have been assigned by the government, and it is the Ministry of the Interior, Ministry of Justice, and they have the prerogative to choose and assign all the representatives of each and every ballot box committee. That is the reason why I think we should trust, first of all, to the members of the ballot boxes. Secondly, I think we have to wait and see the result of the justified decision by the High Election Board, because the High Election Board has only given a decision, but there is no justification of it. And I am seriously concerned, because in the public there is a widespread discussion going on to give some kind of a direction to this justification. The justification of the decision is very important. And once we see the justification of the decision, then we will understand what the real motive behind the decision for the rerun is. Thirdly, I think there is one envelope and there are 3 ballot tickets in that. And the other 2 tickets, which are for the district mayoralty and also for the municipality council, are valid, but only for the metropolitan mayor are not valid.
Okay, so let's ask.
This is something which is quite disputable.
Let's ask Egemen. So Egemen, one piece of paper. Why are you okay with some of the results on that paper and not other results? It's the same person in charge of the same paper.
First of all, I'm inclined to correct a statement of Ambassador Cevikoz. when he said the government appointed the committee members, which is not really correct. The government oversaw, but we have an independent National Election Committee,
Are they
which has
fully independent?
branches.
100%.
Well, once they are appointed, yes, they are independent. And we realize that at the city levels and at the district levels, most of the decision makers are judges, and these judges are senior judges. They're about to retire, and they have made some choices in accordance with their political views. This is my assumption. But coming to why some part of the election was okay and the other part has to be renewed, there are two reasons for that. One, AK Party and MHP applied for the mayor elections of the greater Istanbul city to be repeated. Then there were no applications made for every district. And the National Election Committee could only decide based on the applications that come before them.
But aren't those in doubt
There
as
were
well?
some districts where we wanted the election to be redone in Büyükçekmece. MHP asked Maltepe to be repeated, and our applications were refused. Secondly, the total number of votes that are in question, that include some kind of a doubt, has to exceed the difference. So there are 42,000 votes which cannot be decided or have a lot of doubt according to National Election Board. And the total difference in the election of the mayor for Istanbul was 13,000. So that number could have shifted the result, could have changed the result. That is why they decided to redo the elections. But at the district level, the differences were either not enough to make a change.
So even if the votes went completely the other way, they wouldn't make the change?
They wouldn't make the difference. And there were no applications. I mean, with all due respect, CHP did not apply to have all the districts
They've made another point, retrospectively.
to be renewed until the decision about the Istanbul municipality came about. And yesterday they applied to renew the elections in all of the districts. And we have to wait for the decision of the National Election Board.
They've made another point.
They might as well accept that application or not.
Looking into the past, they've made another point. They've said that if you're hanging a big question mark over these elections, then what about the referendum? What about the presidential elections? What about everything that preceded it, because it was the same process? Your brief response to that before I bring in the ambassador.
The difference would not change the result. The presidential elections, their own candidate, presidential candidate, announced that night through a journalist that the guy won. And he sent an SMS, which was aired, so he accepted. But in this instance, the candidates for both alliances, both the People's Alliance and the opposition, both candidates announced their victory that night. Both Mr. İmamoğlu and Mr. Yıldırım announced that they won because it was so closely contended.
Ambassador Cevikoz, June 23rd is coming along. If you feel confident that you won the last time around, and there'll be tremendous scrutiny this time on fairness, on who's looking after the ballots, who's in charge, who's overseeing, you must be confident that you'll win again. So what's the big deal?
What's the big deal? Because it is the right of Ekrem İmamoğlu. He is the mayor. He is the elected mayor. He has
Self-proclaimed.
No, he's not self-proclaimed.
He is self-proclaimed.
He has received his election certificate on the 17th of April, and he has been in duty for the last 3 weeks. But because of the objections and the appeal made by the AKP, the High Election Board has decided that we should go to a rerun. First of all, the decision of the High Election Board is not based on legal concepts or legal justification. It is a political decision, and the political decision is so obvious because Recep Tayyip Erdogan, 3 days before the decision was made a very strong statement and asked for the renewal of the elections. So that shows that actually when an election in Turkey is not won by AKP or by Recep Tayyip Erdogan, then there's a pattern of rerun. Because we have seen this in 2015. On the 7th of June, there was not a majority of the AKP in the parliament, and they asked for a rerun, and we went to a rerun on the 1st of November. And that is what exactly Recep Tayyip Erdogan said last week. He said, We did it once in 2015. We will do it
Okay,
again.
so let's get a
this year.
response from Egemen. So
Totally
it's the
mixing
president picking
apples
up the
and
phone
oranges.
saying rerun it, not the
president
independent
did not pick up any phone,
Electoral Commission.
but Speaker of the main opposition party, CHP, publicly threatened members of the National Election Board that they would be prosecuted with treason if they had decided to renew the elections. So political pressure, yes, but from the opposition to the National Election Board. But the members, and this was a 7-4 vote, so it's not even that close, decided legally that because of the discrepancies, because of the mishandlings, because of the way it was carried out, and they also announced that they will take legal actions. They will ask prosecutors to look into the matter where these mishandlings took place to see if any criminal activity took place or not. But comparing this election to the presidential election or to the parliamentary elections, which was not renewed, by the way, the reason parliamentary elections took place last time is because a coalition could not be established, an independent cabinet was formed for a certain period, and for the lack of a government, a new election had to take place according to our constitution.
Egemen, okay.
But it forms a pattern. It forms a pattern.
Okay, so you believe there's a pattern. Okay.
If CHP had established a coalition with AK Party, and the AK Party leader at that time really wanted to establish, but they couldn't agree on the terms.
Okay, I want to move forward from 2015. I want to
this
ask about
mixing
money.
apples and
Okay,
oranges,
fine.
with all due
Egemen,
respect.
a lot of people talking about money. The CHP has mentioned money. Independent analysts have mentioned money. We have Ezgi Basharan, the Turkey program coordinator at Oxford University St. Antony's College, telling Politico, Istanbul municipality, for example, has been funding all sorts of foundations that are AKP run. The municipality has also attended to award lucrative infrastructure contracts to AKP-friendly businessmen. There's a $7.5 billion budget. So the idea is, okay, maybe AKP is all right with Ankara going to the opposition, but with Istanbul, there's just too much money at stake. That's why we have to fight to the very end.
That's totally irrelevant.
Tell me why.
First of all, most of these allegations are not true. Second, AK Party is in charge of executing the government, the central government of Turkey till 2023. So money is not the issue because AK Party has the national treasury, which has a much bigger budget than any other municipality. And we did accept losing in places like Antalya, Adana, Mersin, even the capital, Ankara, and we did not make a fuss. Democratically, they won, and we respected that.
Okay.
But their candidate in Istanbul did not win because if all the, even less than half of the ballots were recounted, and the difference dropped from 28,000 to 13,000. If all of the ballots had been recounted, probably our candidate, Mr. Yildirim, would have publicly been declared the winner.
Let me ask
they
Unal Cevikoz.
interfered and they refused and they applied. They used their legal rights to prevent that, and that could not take place. So the only other option for us was to apply for a re-election, and we applied for that, and we had the 3 luggage full of documentation proving the irregularities, proving the discrepancies, proving the mishandlings, proving all the rigging, and they had to take this legal election, legal decision. And now they will announce with the justification of their decision all the details, and we will all find out.
Ambassador Cevikoz, did money have anything to do with this?
There's a very strong feeling and there's a very strong perception that the budget of Istanbul is very dear for AKP. It is so obvious because Istanbul population is about 1/5 of the Turkish population. And it also shows that the budget of Istanbul is the main dynamo or the locomotive of the Turkish economy and industry. And that's the reason why this big budget is very dear to the governing party. And that's the reason why Recep Tayyip Erdogan, before the elections, said that if we lose Istanbul, then we lose Turkey. That's what he said. And that's the reason why it is very difficult now to accept and to digest the defeat. That's the reason why AKP has produced several arguments based on legal cases, but all the legal arguments and objections and the appeals have been refused by the High Election Board. The only last one was very political, and the political pressure put on the High Election Board has unfortunately resulted with the decision of the High Election Board. And now we are going to see the justified decision. And I am, again, I want to underline this. In the public, there is a discussion and people are showing the way how this justification is going to be written to the members of the High Election Board.
Let me ask you, Ambassador Cevikoz, when that day comes around, June 23rd, and if Binali Yildirim wins, would you accept that?
Certainly, this is the result of the normal elections, free and fair elections, as it has happened in this one on the 31st of March. But that is not an option for us. It is not an option because İmamoğlu is embraced by the people of Istanbul, not only by the people of Istanbul. We are receiving support calls from all over Turkey and all over the world. And that is also, in a way, demonstrating that İmamoğlu is very much appreciated. And
but if it's a free and fair election on June 23rd, would you accept it?
If it is a free and fair election, İmamoğlu is going to win it.
Egemen?
Well, people have a right to change their minds, first of all. People will determine who to vote for according to what happens in the next 40, 50 days. Let's see what kind of action İmamoğlu will take, what kind of statements, what kind of activities he will do. I have to give the guy credit. He did much better than we thought, but I think he lost the election with a small margin. But then, because of these riggings, it appeared as if he had won. Now that there will be an election, it is going to be much more transparent because all the political parties will have very close monitoring of every single action.
And the eyes of the world as well.
And the eyes of the world.
Because
I'm sure
they're
there will
questioning
be
Turkey's
representatives
democracy
from all around the world.
How do you feel about, as a former, sorry to interrupt you, as a
And
both of you former representatives of the state to the world, how do you feel about the fact that the world looks at the first run being annulled and the call for the rerun and saying maybe Turkish democracy is flaky?
I feel very sorry.
Well,
I feel very sorry that because we are giving that kind of a perception that this country is unfortunately withering away from the rule of law. And that is the perception which is unfortunately prevailing all over the world. And this is something which makes me quite sorry.
I agree. And those who are responsible for giving that kind of a perception, who rigged the elections, who put the numbers in different columns, and who really gave Turkey a bad image, should be prosecuted. No questions, no ifs, no buts. But when compared the two candidates, Mr. İmamoğlu lacks the experience, and Mr. Yildirim is an achiever. He has done a lot for this country as Minister of Transportation, as Prime Minister, as Speaker of the Parliament. So people of Istanbul might realize that they need more experience and they might change and they might vote for him.
Mr. Minister, I have great respect to you, but you don't expect me to believe in that argument because Mr. İmamoğlu has been a survivor and he has been a very successful mayor in Beylikdüzü, and that is the reason why he has been the nominated candidate of the Republican People's Party.
If he is as good as you claim, then he would not have a problem winning the election.
But he didn't.
He didn't. We both know that the results of the elections changed overnight when we recounted some of the votes. Then you should have helped our application to recount all of the votes. We would not come to this situation.
This is a very far-fetched argument.
I mean, all the ballot boxes of March 31 are still there.
Okay. Well, enough people seem to
recount all of them. And
enough people seem to trust in the process of June 23rd. And I guess all I can say is good luck, everyone, when it comes to June 23rd. I hope we can have the discussion again after June 23rd.
Would love to.
I think this has been a really important discussion.
I disagree with Ambassador Cevikoz. I think Mr. Yildirim is going to win, as he did the first time around.
Okay.
Well, you see that we agree to disagree.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having you on the Newsmakers. Egemen Bagis and Unal Cevikoz, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.